Business owners in my district consistently tell me they have trouble finding people to fill the spaces that they have available. This may be not all skilled immigrant, we call it, I forget the other term that we use, but this is all the way up and down the skill levels. I served in construction, or I owned a construction. I was a contractor for a long time, and that was always like the #1 issue affecting whether we could grow or not, whether we could find people. And I want to talk a little bit about that, but first I want to talk, one thing that I think about a lot here is obviously the fiscal trajectory we're on, the debt. And one of the ways that we can begin to change the trajectory, there are a number of them. You could increase revenue, you could reduce spending to lower the deficit, but you have to have strong economic growth. And in fact, I would argue that you really can't begin to change the debt problem without having strong economic growth. CBO, Dr. Holtz-Eakin, I think I'll ask you this question. You've been, of course, a former director of CBO, but Director Swagel tells me that one of the reasons that they are projecting what is pretty tepid growth for the next 20 or 30 years of about 1.5 to 1.6% annually per year, when our historic average has been closer to 3%. They say one of the major reasons for that is a lack of workers. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that? Do you think having additional workers, maybe through immigration, if we aren't producing enough workers ourselves, is really important? Talk just a little bit to me about how that would affect economic growth.
Yes, I think that's absolutely correct. The demographic transformation that Dr. Pardue talked about has been forecast for a long, long time, and we've seen the transition to a higher ratio of retirees to working age Americans. We've seen on top of that an unanticipated further decline in fertility, and the result is we're simply not seeing rapid growth in the population, which translates into slow growth in the labor force. And economic growth isn't magic; it's arithmetic. It's workers and output per worker, and so it's workers and productivity. Immigration helps on both fronts, and so we can have more workers. And by choosing the skills in the workforce, you can get better productivity. And immigration has, even without trying, this is, I think, one of the points that's worth thinking about from Dr. Neufeld, is that even without trying, we've benefited enormously from the economic talents of immigrants. If we tried, if we targeted the reforms, it would make an enormous difference. So I think that's something to focus on.
Yeah. One of the things, and we could talk about that a little longer, but one of the things that I've found interesting, we've had a year of fairly high growth. Maybe Dr. Pardue asked you this question, but we've had a year of reasonably high growth. I think we ended up about 2.5% or something like that. But it seems that our job market hasn't kept up with that in the way that you would typically expect, showing potentially we're seeing some of the effects of higher productivity potentially through AI. And so I guess I'm wondering how you would project that going forward if we're projected to be short workers. What's AI going to do to that equation? Are we going to see that much higher productivity that we won't need as much immigration as we're thinking here? Just talk to me about what that looks like.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Representative. And I think your assessment is right. We've been seeing fairly strong economic growth, but a slowing job market. And I would point to two over the long term. I would point to two trends, which is that the fact that we're seeing economic growth right now, despite a slow job market, is because of the fact that productivity growth has been so strong, and that's been really keeping up economic growth despite the weak job market. And that's going to have to be the case because of these demographic challenges that I outlined. That, again, by 2030, the CBO projects that native-born population growth will turn negative.
Do you think AI will begin to solve that problem in and of itself?
You know, to be honest, I'm an optimist about AI, but I think that it will, in ways, not affect the total demand for skills, but change the types of skills that are necessary. So I think people will always be a part of the equation, and more people will always grow the pie. And so I'm optimistic that AI will raise productivity, but I think it will increase demand for workers for certain sets of skills. That means that it's not simply going to solve these problems that we have, the demographic problems we have.